Hello, everyone. Just going to allow a minute or two for everyone to join. I started a minute early, so just give everyone 60 seconds or so. Then we'll crack on. Thirty seconds or so. Okay, I think that's good. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the first Series 3 webinar that I've hosted. You'll have the opportunity to meet with myself again and Daniela from the CSM team, as well as colleagues from sort of various departments within the business as well. So you'll see colleagues from support, projects, and even our CEO who's hosting a webinar in July. So we've got Series 1 or 2 all sort of wrapped up now. They are still available online. I highly recommend for those looking to get a bit more from their system. Quick little segment on myself. For those who I've not had the pleasure of speaking with before, my name is Alex. I've been with ProspectSoft coming up 6 years now, 2 of which with the Access Group. So hopefully enough experience for today's topic. So today's topic is successful onboarding of customers. So hopefully this will be a relatively sort of quickish webinar. There's a fair bit to cover, but I'm going to go nice and slow just because it's a bit of configuration and it's more understanding the sort of principles behind this. There will be a little bit of imagination, as obviously all businesses are going to be different and have different requirements. So we've got a scenario set up which will hopefully meet most of you today. So we're going to look at this topic specifically for onboarding. Prospect CRM contains many features to drive growth for your organization. Onboarding new customers is one of the 7 steps of the growth playbook. As the 4th step in the growth model, the onboard part of growth is about creating long-lasting relationships with customers as they transition from that sort of new customer phase into a returning customer and repeat business from sort of retaining them. And as always, we'll do a bit of live questioning towards the end as well. So a couple of key takeaways. So we'll look at some configuration, make a bit of an onboarding journey for your customers, and the main focus being turning that customer into that returning customer. We'll look at some exposure to functionality as well. So what features and tips we have to, that are available to help with that day-to-day operation, be more productive when onboarding your customers, so make sure they're coming back and doing everything you can, and then reporting as well. So I'm going to give you a bit of a sneak peek into an upcoming webinar on the growth engine, which is what our founder, Andrew Ardron, is hosting, as well as a couple of other bits of data to define your success through the dashboards and RFM and some elements like that. So what is successful onboarding? Onboarding is the process of getting that customer, again, to that returning customer for hopefully years to come. The later phases of that growth model are focusing on customer lifetime value, order frequencies and things like that. So those order frequencies and those order values are really important, but the first step is to get that customer coming back, making sure you're the only supplier of the sort of segment or industry that you're working within, and make sure that you're the sort of go-to name for that client. Not only is most revenue generated by existing customers, but customers who sort of keep coming back help to lower your acquisition costs and increase revenue. Understanding this and taking advantage of Prospect's features that are designed specifically with this sort of question of successful onboarding in mind will help cement a foundation for that long-term customer. So as always, no one likes PowerPoint, so we'll skip through that pretty quickly and then get to the PowerPoint. I'm going to show you a couple of things within a demo system. So as always for these webinars, it's the That's My Jam profile. For those unfamiliar and new to the webinars, this is a fictional company that sells jams and jam jars and jam making machinery from a big warehouse in Hull or something. But yeah, just to set the scene a bit here. So the scenario, as sort of referenced to earlier, onboarding comes a little bit later in the growth model. So assuming they've already sort of had their initial sale, that they've had their inquiry, you've logged the customer within the system, you're now sort of getting to the point where you know who they are, you've got a name on the system, but they're not necessarily a returning customer, you don't know much about them. It's just getting that sort of repetition in place so they become a champion or a loyal customer. So the first thing we're going to do then is actually focus on an acquisition pipeline. So in short, this is an opportunity that we use to acquire a new customer, and having a clear process here will help you sort of map that process, which will depend on your own industry. Everyone's going to have their own sort of pipeline here, but just give a clear structure to how you're planning on bringing in these customers and building on that long-term relationship. So we're in our demo system. Let's go and start with that. So you will need to be administrator for the first section here, just while we create that pipeline from scratch. And we're going to go into settings, and you can obviously find it on the left as always. I'm just going to search for the word pipeline. And we're going to look for opportunity pipeline just here. So opportunity pipeline, we're going to start from the beginning. I'm going to call it something nice and simple, like new customer onboarding or something like that. As you can see, we've already got a couple of pipelines open. Let's just make one from scratch for the purpose of today. And then the objective here, quite important one, is customer acquisition. And then we can ignore those and come back to those later, but we'll just leave those set for no. That's just automatically closing quotes. We're going to create that there. So we have our pipeline. And then as we go into this sort of setting little pencil on this right-hand side, there's some statuses here, which we actually don't have any. So I've got a couple of statuses in mind, for example. Again, this can be entirely up to you, depending on largely on what you need to do to achieve that sort of onboarded customer. So if I go and create some statuses, so the statuses I have in mind, so we have a couple created already. I'm going to make some new ones beforehand. So I've gone to the settings again, and then opportunity statuses. We're going to click to configure. I'm going to add some in here. So the first status I think in onboarding is probably some sort of welcome and introduction. So I'm just going to make a status that's exactly that. Welcome introduction. The task required, I'll go through that once quickly. So that just pops up a task on that record. Depending on the circumstances, you can have that on different statuses, slightly different. But what it means is when I open a new opportunity and it goes into the first status of welcome and introduction, do I want a pop-up to appear? For the first one, I mean, I'd argue all of them, you could actually say they're required for a pop-up. Some of them could be optional. Some of them could just be disabled. You know, it's entirely up to you whether you have these tasks have to be assigned to someone, like mandatory assigned. So we can have that assigned or optional. We'll leave it for optional for now, just it makes this demoing a bit easier. But we'll have welcome introduction. We're going to have a catalog sent out to the customer. So we're going to have a quick set catalog or sent catalog status as well. Sent catalog. We're then going to have a follow-up status. So I'm going to create all these statuses now. Follow-up contact or something. We'll then have another status for nurture and support. Nurture and support, and then we'll need a close status or two as well. Essentially, once we're happy that that customer's been onboarded. And I'm going to use a fourth order as a sort of closing metric, if you like. That'll make sense a bit later on. So all I've done now is create some statuses. So our pipeline in here, if I go and give this a refresh, you'll notice some more statuses in this pipeline. So I'll go back a step just to make sure this is nice and clear. So we've got our pipeline, new customer onboarding. And then if I click this little pencil on the right-hand side, we have no statuses at the moment. So it's an empty pipeline. And what we did on this other screen here was go and make some new statuses. So in this status here, if I press plus, I've now got customer placed fourth order, and a couple of the other ones I made in here. So we've got nurture and support was one I made. We were looking for sent catalog as well, sent brochure, sent catalog, and then the last one was welcome that we made as well. There we go. So I'll update that. So there's our little pipeline. We'll cover the closing statuses in just a second. So just make sure it's in the right order. So we're going to go welcome and introduction, sent catalog, nurture and support. Shouldn't be closed in here. We'll move closed across to the closing statuses. That's my mistake. Let's make a quick change to that over here somewhere. So that's actually a closed status. So I missed that part just a moment ago. So it's a positive closed status. Give that a refresh. That'll now appear in here. So we've made that a closing status. Now we've got welcome introduction, sent catalog, nurture and support. The only one I'm missing was follow-up contact as well. So I'll pop that in. So you can go do a bit of back and forth on this, just make it make sense. Obviously, you can change them as well. They don't have to be in sort of rigid forever. You can go back and add statuses in. Probably something you'll end up doing, especially if you're sort of new to these acquisition pipelines, is just go back and change them. So we've added some statuses. We've made our pipeline. We've then gone to our pipeline and created these statuses in this order of welcome, sent catalog, follow-up contact, nurture and support, and then a closed. You may also need a negative close. Obviously, you're not going to manage to onboard every single customer, but in that case, you might have another status or something called like, dead or lost or something like that. When they, despite all your best efforts, they don't come back. And unfortunately, that is the nature of business. So we've got our nice new pipeline. If I go into a record now, then we'll go and have a look at using this pipeline. Obviously, you don't need to be an administrator for this part. This is looking at that customer journey that we've just made. So if I go and grab a customer, we'll grab a contact as well. It's always best to use a contact, in my opinion, just best practice. We'll use, Robin, that's fine. And then what we'll do then, imagining this is a new customer and they've made one order or something along those lines, we can now add that opportunity. We'll call it new customer, or whatever you like. The pipeline is going to be our new pipeline, so new customer onboarding, and that automatically populates that first status of welcome and introduction. And there's a few sizes and a few fields which you might want to configure as well. But we'll keep it simple and skip over those. Okay, so now we've got our pipelines. This is what we've just made. Up here at the top, introduction, catalog, going forward. And we've also got our activity feed as well. So you might want to add a summary, just a little bit about the opportunity, who the customer is, what sort of industry they work in, what sort of scope for your onboarding they might have. And then obviously an activity which I highly advise everyone just use, just to create a bit of a rapport as to what's gone on, helps build that relationship and be able to look back on conversations you've had in the past. So the welcome and introduction, it could be a phone call in this instance. We're working for the jam company. It's a brand new customer. We're calling them to welcome them, thank them for their first business, first sale or first order. And you might go back to them, and maybe then after that, you send them a catalog of your pricing or something like that. So we can do this nicely and easily with an automated email that sort of fills in a lot of the fields for you and merges fields in, and you can actually auto attach catalogs from the library. So I'll open this back in another tab. We'll sort of skip around a bit today in today's demo. So the library is a feature very much like Windows File Explorer. So on the left-hand side, you've got library, and you can just make folders in here, call them whatever you wish, make subfolders, just like this one here, and then create or attach PDFs and Word documents in there. And we already have in here product brochures and specifications and a product brochure document in this case. It's a public document, meaning we can send it out, which means I can go and attach that to an email and go and send a nice, short, snappy welcome email to that customer. So if I go over here into our record that we've just made, if I go to their email address, I know I've already set up a template then for a welcome email. And it's a nice, simple one. It says, hello, Thank you for your time today. Overjoyed to have your business. Please find the brochure attached, and it automatically attached that brochure there. So when I go and send that email to them, I can then go and move that status across. We'll get that sent. So I've had a welcome call, spoken to Robin in this case. We've come back to the CRM, assuming he put some notes on, which I probably should have done beforehand, put some notes on of our conversation. And then we've come back to the record, opened up an email, and then selected a template using that already pre-created welcome email that I've made. That welcome email attaches that catalog, which is done for me. And now we've moved across to getting sent catalog as well. So we're moving across that status. So there's a few other tools we can use here. So hopefully we might be getting in touch again in this process, get in touch again, have a follow-up contact, maybe just call them and see if they received that brochure, see if they're ready to place another order. Another great way of reaching out to customers is email marketing. There's a few different sort of methods you can use here, two of which I think are really useful. One of which is promotions. So we know who the new customers are, something I'll show you that segment in a little bit later on, but you know who the new customers are. So it's nice and easy to make a promotion for those customers specifically and say, hello, thank you for your recent order. Here's 20% off your next order, expiring then, or something like that. So it's a nice, easy way of segmenting those customers. And you can make those campaigns from one of the integrated systems we use, like MailChimp or Klaviyo or Spotler, etc. Another and potentially more sort of useful in some instances is a drip feed campaign. This comes straight out of our growth playbook and something that I believe Klaviyo and MailChimp both do exceptionally well, where essentially you send a number of communications to that specific audience, that new customer base as well. And that's a great way of identifying sort of those customers who might want to come back. It helps them, they sort of get those initial emails coming through. It helps the introduction to your brand and your products gradually. It's a low investment from you guys. Once they're in that campaign, you can automate the whole thing through Klaviyo and MailChimp. So you're not really doing too much other than putting them there to get those emails. And it's just a nice way of sort of reminding them that your brand exists, your customers, that they could be one of your customers and they can come back and order when they're ready. So the easiest way of doing that is actually through the RFM analysis. So we've got the dashboard, hopefully many of you are familiar with now, and we have these new customer segments down here. So this new customers will just be filled with a list of those people who have made 1 or 2 orders. They're not a repeat ordering company, but they could potentially be. Now, annoyingly for the demo, I don't actually have any in here, just with this demo data. But we could use, you can use any of these just to get an idea. So we'd have a list of customers, and all we would do is go and sort of tag these through MailChimp or build a report of these contacts and tag them that way. When in MailChimp, you could then move those contacts around, or Klaviyo, and put them in that drip feed campaign. So while we're on the dashboard, another sort of really useful element as well is this missing orders tile. So missing orders looks at your customers' buying patterns. It looks at customers who are sort of well existing. You might have made hundreds of orders, but also those new customers as well. And it just does an analysis of their buying patterns. It's a really good return on investment. I'd actually argue, in my opinion at least, that it's one of the earliest things to look at in the system to justify value and the capabilities that Prospect can offer. So if I click into this now, again, unfortunately, I don't have any new customers to show you, but you can definitely get the idea. There'll just be another line in here with a new customers tag on instead of one of these tags over here. So at the point that customer starts making multiple orders, just like this one here, you'll get a countdown of days since their last order, the average days between their orders, and an order warning as well as some other fields like their average order value and some bits and pieces that might help you decide on who to prioritize. So if I had that new customer who maybe made 3 orders, and on average their sort of days between orders was 6, and now it's been 20 days, they would appear in this list. And it's a really nice way of sort of getting a good look as to who's not buying when they should be. You might want to reach out, give them a call. You could again use some kind of campaign for this. Maybe it needs a human interaction. Again, it's largely industry dependent and sort of depending on the resources you're willing to invest as well. But in that scenario, we've got someone who was buying every 6 days. Now it's been 20. Me as a sales rep can see that as a really good opportunity just to give them a call and just say, hello, do you want to buy some more jam? Basically, in the shortest sense possible. Probably a little bit more beefed up than that, but you get the idea. And we sort of have that conversation with them, bring them back into the fold. As we then continue to move down, so we've had that sort of follow-up contact with them, we'll keep going down. We'll nurture and support is another status I put in here. We're again adding more notes that you've spoken to this person, they've had a conversation about another order, maybe they've now made 3 or 4 order. And as we're finishing off this, you can then have a closed status over here. So I've gone and closed this now. So we've closed it and we've either got that dead status or customer placed 4th order. Placing that 4th order is a really good status that aligns well with prospects. I'll explain that in a second. But placing a 4th order, they've kind of gone from that new customer that's made 1 order in the past or 2 orders. They've now made 4. They are clearly repeat business and they're coming back, and hopefully that will continue to grow. And the reason the 4th order is quite useful is these statuses on the dashboard. This new customer, if we go and have a look at this analysis, a new customer by definition is someone who bought more recently. Let me click on that, apologies. Bought more recently, but doesn't purchase often. And as they sort of make that 4th order, they'll start moving around to these other statuses as well. In an ideal world, everyone will be a champion customer, which obviously buy recently, they buy often, and they spend good money with you. But the new customer is definitely the first stage as they start moving around towards that green up there. So at this point, we've successfully onboarded our customer. We've used a combination of a pipeline to give us a process, email marketing for that drip feed campaign and that promotion, if that's the sort of route you choose, the library to contain our brochure, which we emailed over to our customer, and then some of those dashboard tiles to give you a bit of a look as to sort of what the customer's doing in their journey, and give you a bit of an inkling in their orders as well. So the next thing I wanted to show you, I sort of ummed and ahed on this just because we actually have a webinar on this very, very soon. Some of you will have never seen this before. Some of you may have. This is a bit of a sneak peek then into the growth engine. It's not a feature you can find yet. The sort of URLs all hidden up and it's just in preview. We have a webinar coming out soon on this, but I'm going to show you specifically this page, which looks at customers placing their 4th order versus new customers. So we've got a bit of a key on this sort of right hand side. We've got customers placing 4th order is this dark blue, new customers being the sort of lighter blue there, and then 2 trend lines as well. So we can see this is, I've looked across a couple of systems, this tends to be actually what quite a lot of you guys have. It's a nice visual way of looking at this. This is saying that, let's look at May, for example. In May, we had 13 new customers, just looking at that key on the left-hand side, that column there. So we had 13 new customers, and then we only had 3 customers making their 4th order. So, roughly 20% or something of customers that make their 1st order are actually making a 4th. That's a nice, arguably a little bit alarming sort of statistic. Not too much though. There's plenty prospect can offer to get that sort of back on track. Not that it's particularly alarming, like I said, but in an ideal world, you'd have sort of 1 for 1 here, that every customer you onboard or every customer that places 1 order will eventually come back and place 4. That's probably never going to happen to be 1 for 1, but you can certainly try and get it at, it's at 20% now. Can we do 25? Can we do 30%? Can we do 50%? If you can get to the point where half of the customers making 1 order actually come back and make a 4th order, you'll, it's going to really start to grow, and that retention then comes into play as we move through that growth formula. You'll go from that onboarding section to really trying to get more out of that existing customer base through higher order value, more orders in terms of frequency, and then hopefully a higher lifetime value as well as they stay with you for longer and keep trading with you. So I wanted to show you this as well. Again, there's a bit of a better webinar coming up soon as well. So, but again, this was quite a short webinar. It's very configurable. I'd argue that this won't appeal to everyone as I've demoed it, but the statuses can change, and you can make sort of the best of this and really get some usage out of it. So just going back to before we do a sort of a key takeaway, just a bit of a summary. And again, just going back to that webinar, I think it's on the 17th of July, hosted by Andy. So I would definitely come back and watch that one where he'll go through this sort of entire feature. It's sort of one of the biggest things we're going to be pushing this year, and definitely something to get ahead of the curve on. Back in here, I think that's it from me, though. It was a short webinar today. I say short, we're only 5 minutes short, so that leaves us plenty of time for a Q&A, and I can see a couple of questions already in. So one of the questions I think was typed up as I was still talking. So where can we find more about the growth engine? Where can we find the growth engine? As mentioned, it's currently hidden just because it's still undergoing a load of sort of mini changes and a bit of work. And that initial webinar will be on the 17th of July. It is on the webinar page if you wish to come along for that. And then I had another question as well. So could we have some help setting up email marketing? That's no problem at all. We actually have a webinar. I think the webinar covered MailChimp specifically, but just going through and connecting and using some of the basic marketing functionalities you've got. Interestingly, if you piggyback off the back of that webinar, you can pretty quickly see how adapting a new customer would work within that email marketing campaign. There would be, you could use your imagination and fill the gaps there really easily. That webinar is quite in depth. Can we have a recording of this webinar? Yes, this webinar should be live. What day are we on? Thursday. It will probably be on our YouTube channel tomorrow, if not on Monday. Yeah, they'll be there, but yes, we can definitely get you a recording. And by all means, again, all the other ones will be on YouTube as well. So definitely go back and watch series 1 and 2 if you want to learn more. Most of the webinars we host are normally sort of 30 minutes to 45 minutes, and they cover a section of features or a topic like this one, doing onboarding. We've covered the report builder, email marketing, the dashboards, quoting, all these other bits and pieces as well. So definitely give it a watch. And I'll give it a couple of seconds for any other questions. It doesn't look like there's too many questions, so hopefully that means my webinar has been sufficient. But I think that is it. So that's probably a record for me, 26 minutes. So yes, thank you all very much for coming. I will get you back to your very busy afternoons. Take care, everyone. Thank you.